Linda Boff and Anda Gansca with Tanya Dua.
Well, good morning. Hopefully that was a good coffee break for all of you. Those of you that haven't seen our 15 most innovative CMO list, Linda is number 2. Go check it out. And today we're here to talk about transparency and measurement. Transparency has been a key issue that has come up in the marketing world repeatedly over the last 1 year. Aside from issues of brand safety and trust, and today with Anda and Linda, we will talk about transparency. So GE has always been at the forefront of trying out new media platforms, of really using technology to drive marketing. What was missing, Linda?
Great question. Well, it's great to be here. Thank you. I love this conference. Look, I feel as though for GE, we've always taken a great deal of pride and inspiration from being this company founded by Edison, being innovative in our storytelling. I think our creative, thanks to our team, is really fantastic. However, we want to know a lot more about our audiences. And it's not enough to sort of be creatively led, hard as that is to actually say. We really want to be audience first. And so what I would say is missing, has been missing, and we're on that journey with help from Anda and others, is knowing everything that's knowable. Knowing who's seeing our content, who's sharing it, what they're doing with it, what business outcomes we're driving. And it starts with data. It starts with knowing our audiences better. It starts with being able to measure and have a neutrality when it comes, it's a funny word to use, don't mean it in any other way, have a neutrality when it comes to how good is good. Because I think one of the challenges as marketers we all have is what metric are we signing up for? What metric are we proud of? And how does that compare? What's the context? So that's some of the things we're thinking about now.
Well, there's no dearth of places you can get that data from, that measurement from. So what does Knotch bring to the table, Anda, that you kind of use as your selling point when you meet with marketers like Linda?
So there's a few different aspects to what we do, and I think as a technology company, we always lead with technology and talk about what differentiates us from a tech standpoint. So I'll start by saying that we're the only data company that I know of that sources first-party data for brands. The second piece is that we try to source the qual and the quant. So traditionally, brands have thought of people's feelings as research and people's behavior as analytics. And we're trying to bring those two together because we think, the truth about a human is at the intersection between what they say about themselves and what their behavior says about them. But more than anything else, more than technology, the ad tech landscape is really interesting when you look at companies, the startups in it. And we try to differentiate by standing for something more than just making money. And for us, that's transparency. It's enabling brands like GE and JP Chase and Unilever to be able to independently measure and compare all of their marketing dollars in real time. So we've made a commitment to not monetize from any what we call distribution channels. So whether we're talking walled gardens or media companies or ad exchanges, we do not have commercial relationships with them because we want to be financially accountable to the brands that we serve. And I think that's a really big differentiator. And of course, Linda can speak more to that.
Yeah, no, I mean, look, you want to be Switzerland. You want to know that the data you're getting back, the information, because Tanya, to your point, there is no dearth of data, but you need context. And I think the context of being able to dispassionately compare how things perform, and in all great due respect to the media companies that we work with, everybody has their own way of measuring this. So you want that sense of a even playing field, and I think Knotch has uniquely done that.
I remember this came up earlier, and you said GE doesn't necessarily do programmatic. You do very bespoke buying on publishers.
That's right.
Why does it become even more important for you to have this dispassionate view of comparing different measurement metrics that these publishers give you?
Yeah, so we don't do programmatic. It's a function of two things. One is just being very practical. We don't have a large budget, and we want to use every single dollar. I want to know where every dollar is delivering, every single dollar. I want to have eyes on it. I want to know the audience. So in a sense, that drives even more accountability, because when we're doing a program with Aussie or Business Insider or Mike or Facebook or Google, anybody else, because we put so much time into each individual campaign, I almost think of it, it's bespoke, but I almost think of it as like handcrafted, right? You know, we take such care in every individual campaign that it's vital for us to know, how's this doing? Is it getting the kind of attention? Is it getting the kind of shareability? Is it ultimately going to drive business outcomes, which is obviously for us as marketers in this room what it's all about. It's, you know, these measurements are a proxy toward driving business outcomes. They're not in and of themselves what we care about. They're the means by which we're going to help drive the business, in our case of GA.
What are some of the metrics that are super important to you? A lot of metrics today, or you know, the ones that we've been using so far, are vanity metrics, so to call them. What are the metrics that actually matter to brands?
So you're reminding me of a term we sometimes use at GE, success theater. And vanity metrics are like that, right? Like, what are the numbers that you're going to put up that are just going to make you look good, but they're completely out of context? And I said this to Tanya backstage, I never need to see an impression number again, never. I'll be fine without it, because it doesn't mean as much to me. It means that Anda or Tanya or one of you out there was served an ad. Great, right? I mean, what's the, you know, it's such a one-way street. So, so metrics like that are simply saying that this crossed somebody's visage just don't matter as much to me. We are candidly asking ourselves this very question right now. Certainly, things that are a proxy for engagement and action, to me, are what matter the most. And you can easily then say, okay, that's shareability. To some degree, I think it's time spent. I mean, again, there, you know, it's almost as though we had a whiteboard. It's almost like you want to draw an ecosystem of how these things, what one leads to another, so that you're increasingly driving high-value tasks and hopefully driving people down a funnel, right? So they get more and more engaged. But I would say the metrics that have an action orientation mean a great deal to us. I don't know how Anda's truly the expert on this one. I can tell you from the brand point of view, but what do you see in the marketplace? Now I've become Tanya and asking you questions.
No, thank
No,
you.
I like this
double interview.
I was going to ask you this, which is, you know, everyone kind of prioritizes different metrics, right? Different platforms prioritize different metrics. How do you then come in and say, okay, these are the ones that actually drive action or ROI?
Well, I'll start by saying that one of the metrics that we hear about a lot that I think everyone agrees is becoming a bit more of a vanity metric is brand lift. It's very difficult to take a metric like brand lift, which, you know, you need 6 months or 3 to 6 months of data to really gather, and then say, you know, this data that we gathered 6 months ago actually connects to business results. It's very difficult to do it from a technical standpoint, and I think time and time again, CMOs have been disappointed by that metric. So I'll start by saying that almost everyone I talk to is trying to redefine what that means. You're totally right that success means different things to different brands. And so while impressions don't matter to Linda, they do matter to other CMOs. And so for us as a data company, I think what we're trying not to enable is this behavior where we're constantly talking about benchmarking. I actually am not a fan of this idea that there's some sort of universal benchmark for success for all brands, or that brands should just compare themselves with their competitors without understanding what the purpose behind different campaigns or different, you know, yearly strategies were. So I think it really depends. That's the answer. Whether it's success for a brand means reaching a lot of people or reaching a very specific audience or getting a lot of engagement because you're focusing on bespoke content, it really depends on the brand.
I might just add to that, to Anda's point, you know, we tend to be at GE in long cycle, fairly complicated businesses with discrete customers. And when we think about this, you know, there are times that we are doing brand advertising to talk about the whole company as a way to encourage people to come work for us, as a way to encourage people to invest. 40% of our stock is held by retail investors. So there are reasons at times that you do bigger, broader brand campaigns, and then other times where it's much more around driving specific business results. And those, I think, are different headset, different metrics. I still would go with more actionable metrics, but that's where I come out.
Can you give us kind of a tangible example of where you used Knotch, you used the data, you used, I know that one of the features you guys offer is, letting them take a look at their competitive set. Can you give us a tangible example of using all of that knowledge and then tailoring, a campaign based on that?
What's your favorite? What do you think we should do?
Well, I think
we didn't compare notes on this one.
Yeah, that's true. I think one of my favorites is trying to understand the difference between the owned efforts and the bought efforts, because across the board, at least I've seen a big movement from CMOs into building their own content studios, because not only is it cheaper, but you have a lot more control over the creative, and you have more control over the audience who sees it, the data that you collect, et cetera. So the question was, which one is more impactful, given how you define impact, right? And we discovered that owned was doing really, really well.
Yeah, let me expand on that a little bit. So for us, owned, everybody has their own definition of this, is something where we put a fair amount of effort. So we do every day something called GE Reports. It's kind of our blog, and it's written by a former reporter who's quite good. We certainly do a fair amount of content, and sometimes it's with a distribution or a media partner, and sometimes it's something that we're originating and then finding that partner. So a recent example would be earlier this fall, we did something called Drone Week, where we went and shot footage at 5 different energy renewable sites, and the footage was magnificent, and we wound up working with Vice, and this became a 5-hour program on Vice. So, as we think about owned content, we think about it from a few different ways. What are the resources that it takes to create that? We are not in any way, shape, or form trying to become Business Insider. That is not the business that we are in. However, for the efforts that are the ones where we, sort of lean in hard, it's really encouraging to know, because those, it's a different resource model, that those do so well. So I would say that's a really good one. For us, it'll probably always be a mix of some owned content and some things that are publisher collaborations and some things that are purely starting with a publisher and is just so great that we want to find a way to be part of it.
And sorry, go ahead. Linda, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think one of the really big priorities that I've heard you talk about, and a lot of other amazing CMOs, is to go direct with the audience, right? And I think the owned piece, as well as some of these really bespoke programs, help you get that direct conversation going, and hopefully also enable you to collect that data back, accumulate it over time, so that you can go back to that audience and meet them with more and more amazing content.
Yeah, it's a great prompt, thank you. So for us, we want to establish an ongoing relationship with our audiences. Who doesn't, right? Wherever you're coming from. And so increasingly we're spending time, it goes back to kind of the first comment of audience first, what does that mean? And for us that is a first party database. I think of it as our super fans, the people within our important audiences, be they customers, employees, investors, policy, who we want to be serving content to, and be building based on the input we get, the engagement that we get from them, continue to refine that. And in doing that, we're not, we need the platforms, right? We need pipes to do that. But so that's where I think this combination of go direct, how do we measure it, what's the right conduit with which to reach our audiences? And sometimes that's a premium publisher, and sometimes that's Facebook or Google or other places.
So you said you're not trying to be Business Insider. I'm not worried about us. But what about the agencies?
Who here's in an agency? Just raise your hand so I get some sense. So I'm only going to offend like 3 of you, right? 4 maybe. So look, I think it's an interesting time for the agencies, interesting/challenging. So
Should they be worried that a lot of brands, including yourself, are, as you said, going directly to the consumer, or kind of bypassing them and creating
I think they should
their
be
own content?
rethinking. I think they should be thinking hard about their models. So what do we all need? We need, at the simplest form, great content. We need distribution. So in order to engage an audience, those are the 2 pieces, right? We create something, we find a way to serve it. And I think one of the challenges I've seen in many agencies is a binary view of either I create content and I'm going to hand it to you, or I know about media and I'm going to serve it. And those 2 things, for those of you who have had young kids, you can't have parallel play. They have to be integrated, in my opinion. And so increasingly, I find that it's the brands that are pulling those 2 things together, and I want agencies to help us with that. And I think everybody's kind of saying, well, I do this and I do that, but no, I'm a new kind of an agency. But as you dig into it, you still get a lot of, well, I do creative, well, I do media, and it's really still 2018. So I find that a little bit challenging. So for those few of you who raised your hands with agencies, maybe you're thinking of it a different way, but I really do think we need to think of it differently. And it's more than just setting up a content studio inside agency XYZ.
So let's talk about measurement, right? There was a industry gathering yesterday, and Facebook's Carolyn Everson tried to move the conversation away from a universal measurement metric. What do you want as a brand? What do your peers want?
So I don't, it was an interesting discussion, kind of off the record, so I won't go deeply into it. But I think one of the things that we are all, because we're all in this industry in some way or another, we all want safety. We want brand safety. We want measurement that we can understand, that we can serve up to our senior management, that delivers an ROI, right? We want that. So I always go simple. I want the simplest, most accountable metrics possible. And I do agree with Anda. I don't know if there will ever be, one ring to lead them all, Lord of the Rings, right? I don't know if that's possible. But I think we need a simpler set of metrics than we have now. And I think we need some agreed upon standards so that we're not debating the metrics, we're debating what are the metrics doing for us. That's where I kind of want to move the conversation as a brand leader.
And what I wish as an entrepreneur that's in this space is to have the CMOs drive the conversation on what the metrics are, not to have Google, Facebook, and Twitter agree on what they should be and then try to sell them to the CMOs.
I'm glad you brought up brand safety. I do want to talk about that. It is, again, an issue that has cropped up repeatedly just this past week.
Exactly,
with
in the last couple days.
What are your thoughts on that?
I only have one thought, right? I mean, as a brand, the only arbiter is the user. The only arbiter is the person who is watching something, because they are not us. They are not saying, wow, GE, hypothetically, ran this ad, but it was an algorithm and they didn't realize where it was going to be placed. No, that's not how real people think. Real people, I believe, presume that you chose to put your ad in some place that's compromised. So to me, this is black and white, period. I want utter safety because I think the risk we have as CMOs, brand leaders, is every day we invest in building our brand. Every single day, every action, whether it's through media, whether it's through employees' actions, how we treat customers, and the tear down is so fast and easy. So I think this is a fight worth fighting, in my view.
Unfortunately, this is all the time we have. Thank you so much, Linda and Anda.
Thank you, Tanya. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.